Hey, sports fam, it's me, Sasha. As you know, I try to keep my episodes to like 45 minutes or less, but every once in a while I have a guest who I am so enthralled by that I just can't seem to stop talking. So that happened with today's episode with Brandon Day about neurotraining. It was one of those times. So we have split the interview into two parts, just to make it a little bit more manageable for you, the listener. Both are available right now on the feed as parts 1 and 2. So if you're super into it, just slide on in to part 2 when you finish part 1. But if you have to like go into work or something right now, you can listen to part 2 on your way home. So thank you so much for listening and enjoy this special 2-part episode with Brandon Day. Welcome back to Sports Will Save Us All, the podcast where sports are just the beginning. I'm your host, Sasha Graham. So, sports fam, I have been super lucky to have people coming to me from all over the world. And through the magic of technology, I can share their incredible stories. So, we have interviewed people from Australia and Scotland and England. And I have to admit that I am really happy to be back in studio, live and in person with my guest. His name is Brandon Day. Brandon is a 2-time national champion, former All-American linebacker. He holds the distinction of being the second guest, at least that I know of, that has been on the cover of Sports Illustrated, which is so freaking cool. I can't wait to get that story. But sports fam, I like to say that sports are just the beginning, and Brandon is a great example of that. Because following his incredible football career, he spent years battling chronic pain and struggling with getting mentally healthy, which eventually inspired him to take his life in an entirely new direction. Brandon, welcome to Sports Will Save Us All.
Thanks, Sasha. Glad to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. And like I said, it's just so nice to have, somebody in studio. It's been a while. It's been a while. So thanks for making the trek up from Ahwatukee. So right off the jump, I have to ask you about something, which is that you and I both have 3 kids. I took 5 years to have mine. You cleverly just had them all at the same time, right? You have triplets?
Yeah, jackpot.
How's that going?
It's incredible. Talk about an adventure. I mean, we're just starting there. They'll be 9 months old in a couple weeks.
Holy smokes.
2 girls and a boy. And, we don't have any frame of reference. We don't have any other kids. Mm-hmm. So there's that,
Do you think that works in your favor?
I think it does.
Maybe.
Yeah. We don't have anything to compare it to.
You don't know any different.
Right. So, my grandmother said it best. She's like, Brandon, when you do it big. And you've always just jumped in head first.
I did have that same impression. Yeah. I was like, everything this guy does is like, it's big time.
Yeah. So it was kind of like, I played as a true freshman in college. I was, I started playing tackle football 2 years early, which 2
years early, like before like Pop Warner rules would normally allow.
Yeah. So back in those days, showing my age a little bit.
You're a baby. How old are you?
38.
Yeah. No.
So, but back then we didn't have a lot of the guidelines and rules that are in place now to protect kids' heads CTE, primarily. Yeah. So,
and we didn't know. We didn't know as much, right? Like
exactly.
We thought that injuries happened when you got a concussion, and now, of course, like blackout, yeah. Whereas now the evidence is showing that just repeated impact, even when it's not all that strong, really, really affects people.
It's all about those subconcussive blows repeatedly. So we didn't know that. So I started. My best friend's dad was the coach. He got me in. 2 years early. So I'm, 8 years old.
So how old were you? 8?
Yeah.
Playing tackle football?
With a helmet on that was too big for me, out there running around, smashing into people.
Rattling around inside that helmet.
So, that is to say that I like to just jump in.
Yeah.
That looks fun. I'll go play with the big kids, whatever. Let's go have fun.
Was football always your only sport, or did you play everything?
Oh, no. I played everything.
Yeah. I suspected.
And it was such a blessing that my best friend's dad was the coach, and he was retired, so he coached us in everything, and he was a sports fanatic and a great coach too. Worked out really well.
Those two things don't always go hand in hand.
They don't always. It worked out really well for me. His kids,
it's hard to coach your own
tougher
kids.
Time,
yeah.
separating dad from coach and stuff like that.
I had somebody actually on a while ago who worked for the Positive Coaching Alliance, and he talked about how he would instruct parents to have something visual for the kids. So like when I have this hat on, I'm coach, and then when I take it off, I'm mom or dad, which I was wishing I had gotten that advice, before I had coached my own kids, because it would have been helpful. But I hear that a lot, that it's hard to separate those two things.
Yeah. So for me, it was like I had a personal coach whenever I wanted, who could teach me all the ins and outs of all the sports. Right?
And this is in Montana?
In Montana.
In Montana.
Yeah. So I had a head start on a lot of those things, and I'm the kind of guy that just jumps right into the fire. That's how I learn best, is by doing. So I got the chance to get the reps in and to start to excel early on.
Why do you think you didn't burn out though? I mean, was it because you were seeing so much success?
Yeah, I think that was very helpful. My parents also split up early on, and I learned that sports was a really good way for me to get positive attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
it was a way to separate or, get out of the daily life and the struggles in the family. So it became an escape. A really powerful escape where I was seeing a lot of success. So that just fed me, to go more and more and more and deeper into it.
Well, and where else, I guess maybe performing arts, something like that, but where else are you in a circumstance where other people, oftentimes strangers, are cheering their heads off for you, like yelling your name, right? Like that is a really powerful thing, particularly I think as a kid, that if you're not having the greatest time at home, like to go into an environment where you can see success and people are literally cheering for you, like what's better than that?
That's so true. Yeah. Yeah. And I fed off that big time.
Yeah. I think lots of us have. I think lots of us have. And that's like the ideal, but it's interesting to hear like that you started playing football at 8 years old, and then knowing, when you went all the way through college, like that's a lot of years of football.
Yeah. And there was a couple times in there where I did feel a little burnt out by it. I almost quit a couple times, but I had really good people around me that supported me and amazing coaches. You don't get to play in 3 national championships unless you got some pretty solid coaching.
Cool. And that was for Carroll College, right?
Yeah. Up in Montana. My true freshman year in 2005 was their 4th national championship in a row.
My gosh.
And then
what was the key? I mean, why?
Character, recruiting based on character. That's what our coach had always said. And I believe that 100%.
So character over talent? I mean, if you have to decide, obviously you guys are also really talented.
Yeah. But if you looked at us on paper against some of the teams that we played, especially getting into the playoffs and some of those national championships, they were bigger, faster, and stronger at almost every position. But we were a team, and we had great coaches, and we had this cohesiveness that was, at the time, indescribit. Now we know it, or at least I have studied it and learned it as team flow or group flow, where it becomes something greater than the sum of its parts. In religious venues and music and meditation circles, they have this term called collective effervescence that I really like. Ooh, it's fancy. Right?
It's
it makes
good
you tingle
though.
A little bit.
Well, and you can kind of visualize it, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of some bubbles up there.
That's kind of how I see it. And I see it most often these days, 2 places. Concerts, live music.
That's why it's so great going to live music, right?
Yeah, that's number 1. And then the other one is sometimes at sporting events, but at a smaller scale usually. I think it happens easier at a smaller scale because everybody's more...
Meaning like a smaller venue, a smaller team, like as opposed to being in a huge like NFL football stadium. Yeah. You see it more at a high school basketball game.
I think so. Not to say that you can't see it at those big stages, especially in big games. But this collective space that we get to, it becomes like it's an extra state of consciousness. It's like this separate state of consciousness that develops that everyone is kind of tapped into. And that was the feeling when we were on the field together. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to look. I didn't have to ask. I didn't have to tell. I knew what everybody was doing. I knew it in my mind, like, because I knew the playbook so well.
Sure, because of the training.
Yeah. And my coach, you know, the greatest honor he ever gave to me was at our senior banquet. He told me, and everybody sitting there, that I was probably the smartest football player he'd ever coached. And that was a really high honor for me. Like, I always loved my physical ability and I felt good with that. But a lot of the guys on the team were much more athletic than I was, and bigger and faster. And so I really took on that role of the brains of the bunch and kind of like guiding people to where they needed to be. But that aside, it didn't matter who it was. We all felt the same, that we knew exactly what everybody was doing, and we trusted that they were going to get their job done. So we could do ours and we didn't have to think about anything else. That is a huge, huge relief. And that trust is what won us games, what won us national championships. A lot of the teams that we played against, they had massive amounts of talent, but they were missing that extra piece. That's why we were able to, you know, David and Goliath, some of these really powerful, big, fast, like scary looking teams that we played against. I remember the first national championship that I played in, the team we were playing against was so terrifying to me. I was like, what am I doing here? I'm going to get trampled in this game.
I feel like I've seen this movie.
Yeah. But it just didn't work out that way. You know, it was just everybody was on that same page. And when we got onto the field, we were able to access another level that was not available, you know, maybe in our training or to people that didn't have that kind of cohesiveness.
Right. It does occur to me, and I want to hear about the Sports Illustrated cover, so I don't want to jump over that, but it does occur to me that going from that, I think you called it collective effervescence.
Sure.
Going from that to not having that anymore after graduation would not feel very good.
No, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Actually. And I think it's like a silent epidemic in the sports community.
I haven't ever had anybody describe that collective effervescence as well as you just did. I've talked to countless athletes who have talked about how difficult that transition is, either out of pro sports or out of college sports or even high school sports, you know, that going from having that to not having that. But the way that you just put it really, I think, makes it incredibly clear why that transition is so intensely difficult.
Yeah. And in a team scenario, it's very powerful. And those connections that you have in that moment, that trust, like all of those things are amazing. But even from just an individual standpoint, this idea of losing access to flow. And for anybody out there that doesn't know what a flow state is.
Oh yeah. Get into that, because you were describing that actually to somebody in the studio before we started. And I thought, boy, that is a wonderful description. So just say what you said out there, please.
Yeah. We'll see if I can nail it again. But a flow state is simply our optimal state of consciousness where we feel and perform our best.
There you go.
And there are lots of things that happen in the state, the characteristics that often show up in different ends of the spectrum, right? There's this feeling of selflessness, so your sense of self goes away. Really important when you're trying to be a part of a team.
You're in a team sport, yeah.
Yeah, but even individually, you know, when I'm at home playing my guitar, there's no self-critic that pops up. There's no self-doubt. And that allows for every action to flow seamlessly to the next without any hiccups or anything like getting in the way.
Interesting.
You get out of your own way totally. Time starts to dilate or change. Both ways too. Like when you're on the volleyball court, an hour can go by seemingly in an instant. You're like, what happened? We just started.
My trainer tells a joke, actually, that some guy goes into the doctor and the doctor says, you only have a week to live. And the guy immediately drops down into a plank position. And the doc's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going to make it feel like 4 years.
Yeah, I'm going to extend this as long as possible. And that's true. In times of great pain or really intense times, it can slow way down, like frame by frame. If you've ever been in a car accident, you know this.
Yeah, that slow motion effect, right?
Exactly. So it works both ways. And some other things that show up in a flow state are, this is one of the most enjoyable states that we can find ourselves in. And there's a whole neurochemical cocktail that happens in your brain that allows for this. Endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. There's this molecule called anandamide. Ananda meaning bliss in Sanskrit. So it's the bliss molecule, right? Interestingly, it's almost exactly the same chemical makeup as THC.
Interesting. So the euphoria effect.
Yeah. And why THC is often touted as like a super helpful, creativity enhancing compound, and people actually kind of can find their way to flow easier when they use cannabis if it's done properly, right? And it's still just a shortcut. There are, side effects to that. You don't get the true chemical cocktail that you get in flow state. I often say your brain is the best pharmacist on earth, right? It
is interesting though, because like, I think that one of the common things that happens after people have experienced this flow state, say in college sports, and then it suddenly stops, is that they try to replace it with substances.
They do.
It happens just all the time because it's that shortcut to
all the time.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me. And the other things that happen is when we don't understand so here's my big idea, is that I think that flow states should be the goal. Winning the game is just a nice little benefit, side benefit to finding flow in the moment. And that's what we're really seeking in sports, in our relationships, in our hobbies, in our work, in all of life, right? Flow, in a sense, can give life more meaning and have you feel more fulfilled and give you purpose. And it's so enjoyable, right? I think it moves evolution forward, right? I'm getting into the weeds a little bit here, but I think it's so powerful as a reframe to not so much focus on the outcome. And competition is powerful and important for the reason that it increases the challenge of what we're doing. It increases risk, possibly risk to reputation or social risk of fear of failure. Bodily and physical risk is also a big flow trigger.
So like action sports, extreme sports, that sort of thing.
And that's where part of the dangers can lie when we start chasing flow, if we don't understand what kind of triggers we're trying to pull. Because the action adventure sport athlete, their big trigger is risk.
Is Tanner Hall your cousin, by the way?
He is my cousin. Yeah.
Sports fam, if you don't know who Tanner Hall is, he is an incredible free skier. Yeah. And I mean, the things that man does with his body are just, what happened in your family? Talk about sports genes. Is he your first cousin?
He's a second cousin.
Holy smokes.
But on both sides, yeah, we've got Olympians. I have 3 or 4 professional skiers. By the way, I am, in football terms, I'm not that big, like 6 foot, 210 pounds. But in the Day and Gullings family, my 2 sides, I am a giant. Everybody is like skiers, gymnasts, soccer players. I have a cousin that won 2 national championships in soccer, and he coaches out at Appalachian State.
Wow.
Tanner, I got some more professional skiers. My aunt and uncle were alternates on the 86 Olympic team for gymnastics. My aunt was the first woman inducted into the Hall of Fame at the University of Montana for track and gymnastics. Like, it's a theme.
That is just incredible.
You could obviously see how my childhood was shaped by all of this activity in sports, and it was really the
family business.
It really is, yeah, and it was a blessing, yeah.
That was a sidebar, just the like action adventure sports. Like I had.
You want to talk about flow and living at the edge?
Absolutely.
He is a great example, and he's doing it the right way. Like, Tanner is awesome. Early on in his career, you could see he was always chasing that risk trigger and pushing. He still pushes boundaries. Don't get me wrong. He's doing some wild stuff, but he's very calculated about that risk. And he's had some serious injuries that have kind of helped him to
motivated him to calculate risk.
Rethink some of that stuff. So he's a really good example of flow states into your 40s and beyond with a really intense sport like he does with, big mountain skiing really now. He's dropping in off helicopters all over the world and making movies and stuff. Some wild, cool stuff. But a lot of people, and this is a big thing I preach to guys like Tanner, is that you're going to need something. Your body will not last forever at this level. It's just the way of the world.
I have news for you. At any level, your body's not going to last forever.
So it's really important. And like I was talking with your producer Skylar outside, is like, he was a baseball guy and he felt that flow state taken away. And it leaves you in a really, really tough spot.
And vulnerable spot.
And very vulnerable. And it's going to happen to everybody that chases flow in sports of any kind. So it's really important.
If I can interrupt just for a second, because for me, whenever I think about flow, like I think of sports. You mentioned music. Where else do you find it?
Oh my goodness. Great question, because you can find it anywhere. And that's the magic of understanding how it works in your brain. So we are finding flow right now, right? This interview, I'm sure, will go by instantly. Yeah. Like, it'll be over before we know it. That's because you and I are finding a little bit of flow with each other.
Yeah.
And there are specific triggers that we can toy with, turn up and down the dials in order to facilitate that in anything. You can do your laundry and find flow. It lands on a spectrum, right? There's micro flow states, like doing your laundry, but you make it a game and you try to fold those shirts as fast as you can, right? And you set a timer and you compete against yourself. You can find flow doing that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're just pulling certain triggers that allow more attention and focus to be given to the present moment.
And that's the key, the attention and the focus to the present moment.
Flow follows focus, always. You have to have undivided attention, block out all distractions. And then you have to have enough of a challenge to stretch you just outside of your current skill level. This is like the golden rule of flow. Anything you do, if you can increase the challenge a little bit above your skill level or decrease it if it's too challenging, right? You can find that flow channel, as we call. If it's too challenging, you're going to get into like anxiety land where it's just like, it's just too much. I can't hold all this in my mind and it's just out of my realm right now. If it's too low on the challenge for your current skill level, you're going to be bored. That's what most like household chores are at.
Yeah.
I know how to do this. I don't have to think about it. In fact, I'm thinking about what Susie said to me at the water cooler yesterday and, whatever else. So I'm out of the moment.
Yeah.
I am not focused. My attention is all over the place. That's actually not mental health wise the best place that we want to be. We want to be in the present moment. In the present moment is where we should be. We don't want to be anxious, worrying about the future or ruminating on the past. The present moment is where we find joy and happiness. That's where flow sits. And so the more we can get back to that present moment, the better off we're going to be.
I keep thinking about our volleyball games last night because, we play 3 games and all 3 of our games, we had a great combination of humans last night and all 3 of our games were really, really, this sounds weird to say, but they were just really pleasurable. It was just, the level of competition was really good. The people playing, we play 4s, that was really good. And afterwards we were all talking about it because we won 2 of the games, we lost 1. But none of us were mad about it, right? Yeah. It was, which is not always the case. Sometimes it's really frustrating. And I'm wondering now, looking at it, it seems very obvious to me that the reason why it was so pleasurable for all 4 of us was because we were in that collective flow state. That all of us, we really trusted each other. We knew that our passes were going to be where we needed them to be. We weren't playing outside of our positions, which is, it feels like a miracle when that happens. It feels so good. But I wonder, how does one identify at the time that you're in the flow state, or does that even matter?
It doesn't have to matter, but it can be helpful. This is actually an interesting question because some people think that when you identify that you're in it,
takes you out of it.
You take yourself out of it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true at all. I think if you can identify that you're in it, then you can prolong it and sustain it for longer with some simple tools. By the way, that's what I do with my NeuroFlow method.
Let's talk about that.
Neurology and bring it in.
This is a good transition. Yeah.
Well, but this would be a good example to kind of work through that too. So there's a couple things that you will notice when you're on the field, on the court, or in the boardroom, or in a negotiation, like to know if you're getting into flow. The first thing is the richness of experience. So that feeling of richness where your enjoyment starts to just elevate and you just feel lighter.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, everything's just starting to click.
Yeah.
In flow, we call it that seamlessness from action to action, right? That effortless effort. Things are starting to feel easier. Your movements are starting to feel easier. You're feeling more speed, more power, and you're not having to think about what's coming next. You're just reacting. With a team, it's kind of weird to say. I don't know if I have the best way of describing it, but it's like you feel that trust with your teammates. As you said, we're playing in our positions. You don't have one person like all over the sand trying to hit everybody's balls. Right? No, that doesn't work. That is self-focused. You're not playing with the team. With that, from a brain perspective, you have all of these maps in your brain for your environment, for your body, internal environment, and external environment. And your vestibular system and your visual system, along with your body, they're mapping your environment. So like when you're in that space, you know without having to look, where is the edge of like my corner?
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so your vestibular system is heightened up.
Remind me which part is the vestibular system? So
that's your inner ear.
Okay.
Yeah, you have like these two little gyroscopes that are about the size of your pinky nail that live directly behind your eyes, straight in from your inner ear. So they're deep in there and they're tiny, but they are so powerful for first of all knowing where you're at relative to gravity and like which way we're going. But also for mapping your immediate environment. Like I don't have to look or to know that the door is over there. And that if I got up with my eyes closed, I could move around this room. And that's partly my vestibular system that's helping map this environment.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that is actually heightened as well. And you have a better sense of what's called peripersonal space, right? It's the bubble that's a little bit wider than you, that's outside of you, and you know where the other people are. So much so, and there's an amazing book called Stealing Fire by Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheel, where they talk about the Red Bull Air Force.
Stephen Kotler, is that the Superman Rising?
Yeah, the Rise of Superman.
Rise of Superman, yeah.
Yeah, that was the big book for me that turned me on to flow states. But their next book that he did with Jamie Wheel called Stealing Fire, they talk about the Red Bull Air Force and these skydivers and wingsuiters that are moving through.
Those videos are wild.
And they tell a story in the book about, I think, Chicago or maybe New York, jumping off a skyscraper in a movie and having to go around these buildings. Like the most minuscule calculations and precision is needed. And so the reactions that have to happen are lightning fast.
You don't have time to think about them.
It
just has to be reaction. Yeah.
And they talk about in that book, the Red Bull guys, they talk about, moving through the air at such high speeds and being able to just react off of like a little twitch in the foot of the flyer in front of you and knowing, oh, he's going to turn this way. So first of all, like to be able to put yourself into like that collective effervescence, right? That group kind of consciousness and the literal I don't want to sound too woo-woo saying energy field, but it kind of is that. Like, you feel as you come up next to that person, their space and their energy, and you kind of move with it. It's an extra sensory process that your nervous system kind of develops, I think, through this kind of flow state. And it's repeated over and over exposure to that person and to those skills.
That experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think that a lot of times, we'll talk about it, particularly with really, really incredible athletes who we admire, about that X factor, as if it's something that is, that we're incapable of understanding. And yet the science bears it out.
We're getting closer to understanding it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting to hear you talk about that and about what it takes to get there and how you stay there. That's, it's just absolutely fascinating. So you went from the cover of Sports Illustrated, which Sports Fam, I will post it, like I said, on our socials, because it is a beautiful photo.
Yeah,
I assume that it was taken after maybe your second national championship. Is that right?
Yeah. 2007.
Tell me did you know that it was going to be on the cover? Like, do you remember that moment?
Well, I did about 2 hours before it was released. It's a wild story. So we played, I played in the NAIA, which we jokingly refer to as standing for non-athletes in action. Because again, we were like, the smaller kids, not as athletic as some of the other, ones, but we were all about the team. And, the level of competition these days, to be honest, is pretty similar. The real difference, at least in the football game, and I think between like a D1 athlete and a D2 or NAI, which is kind of where we got lumped in, is really just the size, right? The size, and then, a little bit of speed. But overall, like, the competition is pretty much the same. So anyway, the NAI doesn't have big endowments like these big NCAA schools, and we don't get a lot of media coverage. So we just love to play the game, and it was a lot of fun. That's why we go play and maybe get some school paid for. It's kind of nice. But we ended up, for our national championship, we played at a high school field, and it was in Savannah, Tennessee. Wonderful place, amazing people. The high school field had just been resodded for the game, but it didn't drain very well, and it rained for like 4 days while we were down there getting ready. It
feels so much like a scene of Friday Night Lights.
Oh yeah,
I just
100%.
can't even stand it.
3 inches of standing water on the sidelines, and we played in the biggest mud bowl you've ever seen in 2007, and it was one of the funnest football games I've ever played.
I was just going to say, it sounds fun, but was it terrifying?
Yeah.
I mean, it must have been so slippery.
It was very slippery. There was a million fumbles. Nobody could hold on to the ball. Good thing we were kind of a running team, because that worked to our favor. But it was also freezing cold, like 40 degrees, raining and windy.
Wet.
It was wet, and we were chilled to the bone. But before the game started, we're standing in the line for the national anthem, and I looked to my buddy on my left, and I said, when we win this game, we are going to penguin slide right down the middle of that field to the 50-yard line. And he's like, hell yes, that sounds awesome. So we end up winning. We walk through, shake hands, and he's right behind me. I look at him, he looks at me, he's like, let's go. And so we just take off.
Just running. The two of you?
Just the two of us. Did the whole penguin slide, got up on my knees and just, screamed for joy. And turns out that there was an Associated Press photographer there, was not supposed to be there, was supposed to be on a different assignment, but somebody canceled. Not super happy that he was there. At this
because he was cold and wet.
Game at a high school stadium, freezing his butt off.
I bet he's happy now.
He did his job. He came down. He was wandering around, and he sees me slide, and he just kind of turns, snaps a picture, and his screen says, "Bloop, memory card full."
Is that true?
Yeah. And he gets back to his hotel.
That was the final photo he took and was capable of taking?
Yeah. I don't know if he had extra memory cards or something.
Oh, well, let's believe he didn't.
Who knows? But the story works better if it's the end. But he gets back to his hotel room, checks things out. He's like, oh, wow, that's a great picture. Puts it out on the line, and Sports Illustrated picks it up. And so I'm back at home a couple days later, and my friend who works the PE center gives me a call, and she's like, "Hey, I got this call from this guy at Sports Illustrated. He wants to interview you." And I go, "Okay, good one." That's hilarious.
Click.
Yeah, pretty much. And she's like, "No, I'm pretty sure he's from Sports Illustrated. I think it's real, legit." And we're a pranking team, by the way. Like, we prank each other all the time. In fact, I've been pranked a couple times, like in my freshman year as a true freshman, to where I was a little bit skittish.
Yeah, the football pranks are sort of in the news these days.
Yeah, I could tell you stories about a prank war that went on for all of football between me and a couple of good friends that had me feeling a little bit skeptical, to say the least. So I kind of brushed it off. The next day, she's like, "Hey, he called again. You need to call this guy back. I think he's actually from Sports Illustrated." I'm like, "All right, I'll play into it a little bit." By the way, that picture next day was on every front page in the papers around Montana. Carroll wins national championship.
Because it went out on the wire.
Great picture, yeah. So I get the call from her. I call the guy back. He's like, "Really great. We have a hour and a half interview." The whole time I'm like, "Man, this seems maybe legit. I don't know. He's not breaking." So whatever.
Wait, even in the process of giving the interview, you weren't sure that he was actually from Sports Illustrated?
There have been some elaborate pranks going on back at Carroll in those days. So I was not, till the proof was in the pudding, right? I was not going to give in. So I give this interview, and at the end, he goes, "Hey, I don't know if she had told you where we're thinking about put this picture." And I'm thinking like a little blurb. Sure. In the end, in the back, like, what's going on in sports,
in the news,
in the little guy world.
NAIA.
He's like, "Actually, we're thinking about putting it on the cover." And again, I'm like, "Okay."
And at this point, you're like, "Yeah, come on now. This is
gigs up, man." Yeah. Like, you could have said anything but that, and I may have believed it. And he goes, "No, really. We'll let you know. We got to get, some input from the editor. We'll make the final decision, I think, tonight." So later on, the editor gives me a call. And so now I'm like, okay, I don't know this guy's name. I didn't look him up beforehand to see if it was the right name even. But I'm still a little skeptical about the whole cover thing. I'm like, that seems weird. And he goes, "Hey, Mr. Day, so glad to talk to you. So it came down to either you or Roger Clemens for the cover." And this is the Year in Pictures issue. So all the best pictures of the year. It's either you or Roger Clemens. I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Clearly I won out.
Yeah, 9-time Cy Young Award winner, the Rocket, World Series champ, all this stuff. I'm like, "Okay, cool." When is the other shoe going to drop here, right? And he goes, "Mr. Day, your picture is so incredible. And with everything going on right now," this was 2007, Mitchell report, steroid scandal. Mm-hmm. So
things were touchy.
Mm-hmm. He goes, "Your picture epitomizes everything that Sports Illustrated is about. Sportsmanship.
Sports will save us all.
You're doing it for the love of the game." Mm-hmm. I'm getting chills just thinking about it, that conversation, because it was like, okay, I kind of get it now. You can't really see my face in the photo. So that anonymity with just the pure joy.
It's a symbol.
In the mud, no media coverage. Yeah. We're at a high school stadium, right? There's no money involved, nothing.
Not a fancy turf field. Yeah.
He's like, "This epitomizes everything we're about."
Oh, it's giving me chills.
So we chose you for the cover. And at that point, I was speechless. I was like, thanks. It was also midnight at home. So it was 2 a.m. for them. It came out the next day. My friend who was studying abroad in London called me. This is Christmas Eve, by the way. She's getting on a plane to come home. She didn't call me. She messaged me on Facebook. She goes, "I just walked by a newsstand in London Heathrow Airport and I saw your face. Is that really you?"
Wild.
And I was like, "Whoa, now it's real." And then it just kind of exploded after that. And It was a
and what a
wild
boon
time.
for the school too. Like and for that program, like, you know, it could have been a fluke, but it sounds like it was just a really solid program with really great coaching and really great guys, like all the way around. Like
It was.
that's a story.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.